Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tanchaz Talk, the world's only English language program focusing primarily on Hungarian folk music. I am your host, Kalman Magyar Öcsi, coming to you today from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It's so nice to be back. It's been a while since I've done a show. A quick update on that. I went down to Florida several weeks ago for a week, and I came back to Canada, and the laws here require a quarantine for 14 days when you come back from some vicious locations like the US. Actually, if you step out of the country and you step back in, you have a 14-day quarantine. So I was observing the law in that regard, and I was quarantining at home, which meant that I was not able to kind of step out of the house, which included coming into the office of Magyar Bogle and O'Hara, my law firm, where I record these shows. So, but I was thinking about the show and, of course, reflecting on what topics I should be covering, and got some nice ideas coming up for future shows and interviews as well. And of course, everybody's trying to survive 2020, the craziness of the world. Are you enjoying it? If you're in the US, are you enjoying yourself right now? This is a fun time. Of course, this is right after the election week, as I call it, not election day anymore. But anyway, I was thinking during the quarantine, what's a nice topic to come back to. And speaking of controversy, elections and all that, and COVID and restrictions and the rest, I was thinking, let's tackle the question, what is gypsy music? What is gypsy music is the theme of today's show. It's more of a question than an answer, although there are some answers certainly we can explore. I wanted to first make sure that I address some nomenclature. So gypsy, that term, I know it's become over time to be offensive, or known to be taken as offensive, and I could be using the term Roma or Romani when I refer to the group of people that have come from India, the nomadic people that came from India centuries ago into Europe, and then of course into North America as well. So I don't mean any offense by using that term, but that's the historical term that I will be using during this show, and with all respect and when we talk about gypsy music, there is the real typical gypsy music that if you stop anybody on the street in Hungary, or any average Hungarian, really, what's gypsy music, they will talk about that classical style, with the classical sounding violin and the bass and the bracha and that's the viola and the cimbalom, and the Brahms, Liszt kind of music. I call it sometimes restaurant music or the entertaining music. Well, there's a reason why most people, average Hungarians, will consider that to be what gypsy music is. And as I explore that topic, well, here is a book that I'm holding in my hand, Hungarian Folk Songs and Folk Instruments. The author is János Monga János, and he wrote this many years ago. It's been translated into English. And I'm going to read from this so we kind of establish where this notion came from. This is very important, and I generally don't read from source material on this show, but I think this is important enough, and here it goes. Ferenc Liszt's book, De Bohemians et de leur musique en Hongrie. So I mispronounced that, but that means the book the Bohemians and the Music of Hungary, Bohemians referencing gypsies or Roma, published in 1859, allowed a great misconception to spread throughout Europe. He alleged that the music played by gypsy musicians was their own, and hence that it was gypsy music. Liszt regarded their unrestricted, undisciplined, and rhapsodic style of performance as their ancient musical heritage. Samuel Brassai replied to Liszt's mistaken conclusions thus: "The entire instrumental music of gypsy bands developed side by side with the exaggerated style of ornamentation adopted by the European virtuosos. Their style of ornamentation is nothing but the gleanings of European virtuosity. Its irregularities, which you so glorify, Liszt, stem not from the independence of the idealized gypsy character, but from the imperfections of botched imitations, which we can observe in every so-called natural musician, be he gypsy or non-gypsy." That's the end of the quote from Samuel Brassai. This style of performance, extolled by many and censured by many, has been preserved by gypsy orchestras. But it should be emphasized that the style of delivery can in no sense be regarded as ancient, as a heritage that the gypsies brought with them from the East, and even less what they play be described as gypsy. The term gypsy music, quote unquote, was incorrectly coined, and it was probably this that misled Ferenc Liszt also. Isn't that interesting? So, what are we talking about here? The style of music that Liszt Ferenc thought was quote unquote gypsy music is what we generally hear in the restaurants and at parties and the like. And here's an example. This is the Hungarian dances number 1, number 5, number 6, all combined. These are the Hungarian dances by Brahms, played by Sándor Lakatos's Hungarian gypsy orchestra, the very famous Sándor Lakatos. Let's listen to this. Beautiful music. Hear the great clarinet line as well. This is, of course, composed music, composed by Brahms. Imitating the style. Imitating the style that Liszt and in general all Hungarians, even to this day, refer to as gypsy music, although it's a trolling term, fake news. This is the Brahms number 5, I think, coming up. Everybody's heard this. This is a wickedly difficult genre. A very, very high form of music. You know, it's like folk music, which is what Samuel Brassai talks about in the quote I just read. Like folk music kind of mixed with classical string quartet sound. It's amazing. There's cello here too, everything. Counterpoint, harmonies, great virtuosity. Quiet. Za, za. Major. Of course, Liszt got the last word. We forgive him as Hungarians and as folk music lovers. In fact, of course, we've named the Music Academy in Budapest after him, which today teaches folk music, of course, aside from classical and other. And it also teaches this type of music, the gypsy music, as we call gypsy music, which is not gypsy music. Let's also listen to dance number 6, which is seldom heard. A couple of weeks ago, the Hagyományok Háza was showing it's not even the competition, it's like the accreditation of these gypsy violinists in Budapest, these younger folks that try to get accredited so they can play, various restaurants and the like, and it's very, very challenging. The repertoire, the breadth of knowledge they need in their heads, the jury members will ask them to play this, play that, play this in this key, play something from this guy, whatever. They have to know all this stuff. It's a really amazing thing to watch. That's on Hagyományok Háza website, the Heritage House in Hungary. You can watch it on their YouTube channel. So much to listen for here. The dynamics and the crispness of the playing, the ensemble playing. Plúty at the end. Oh, beautiful. That's Sándor Lakatos playing some Hungarian dances by Brahms. What is traditionally known as gypsy music. And of course, as I just read, and as we folk lovers know, that's actually not really gypsy music, although it is played by gypsies, as we all know, mainly. What is actually a gypsy music? Potentially, well, one of the answers is the actual music of the gypsies, the ancient songs, their folklore. With a bit of a potential Indian influence, using their ancient songs and their own language, played on usually rudimentary instruments, sometimes like just percussion, or even like they'll accompany themselves only just a cappella, but there's also sometimes guitar and some other instruments added. One of the great purveyors and groups that have played this music and put it on the map really to many Hungarians is Kai Jog, and I'd like to play two songs from Kai Jog. One of them is Ajaj Devla, and the other one is Morishe Sabina. These are two gorgeous songs, and you get a flavor of this is actually the folkloric music of the Gypsies themselves, or is it? Maybe by the end of the episode, we'll figure out the answer. What is Gypsy music? Or we may just leave with more questions. But let's listen to Kai Jog play two selections of traditional Gypsy folk songs. A little arranged, but you'll hear it. It's nice. Now this is Hungarian language here, second verse in Hungarian. Hear those beautiful ornaments in the singing, very unique. Yeah, it's beautiful. Kai Jog with Ajaj Devla, and then let's play another track from them, Morishe. Now you have this can, the konna they call it. It's a big jug, percussion instrument. It's a little loud on the mix, I think, but anyway. this is a composed song, actually. It's written in that style still, that the archaic gypsy folk style inspired, but this is an actual composed song by one of the members of Kaiyag. So it's worth keeping that in mind. Nevertheless, it's an absolutely gorgeous song and very popular. Very nice. Kaiyag, great band. I don't think they're still active. I don't know. Maybe they are. But it's really nice when they combine those two styles. So when we talk about the gypsy music that Liszt Ferenc and the average Hungarian says it's still gypsy music, and this, this kind of more archaic setup. I like it when they combine those two genres. One of the great bands that does that, they're called Szilvási Gypsy Folk Band. I've played from them before, and I have a nice live recording of this. So they kind of combine those two setups to come up with some very, very interesting or very fun arrangements. And here's a bit of them here. So you just have that kind of the gypsy violin, a little classical style with the guitar, the percussion, clarinet, bass. Finally, clarinet solo. Szilvási gypsy folk band there, combining those two styles really nicely, I think. And that's very popular kind of sound. You know, you go to some concerts in Hungary, all the hipsters are jumping up and down, and everybody loves that stuff. As I consider the question, what is gypsy music, you know, now we can maybe look into some more, you know, kind of probing questions. For instance, I'm going to play you something that I'm going to ask you the question. Do you think this is gypsy music? Well, ordinarily, maybe not, right? We wouldn't think about this as gypsy music. What is this? Well, this is music from the Carpathian Mountains, from the Gymes Valley. This is very, very ancient Hungarian music, played by violin and sometimes like like a flute or a shepherd's flute. And the accompanying instrument, that percussion instrument, is the ütőgardon, the percussive cello, which is literally a cello with gut strings all tuned to the same note, which is D usually, and it's hit with one hand on a stick and plucked with the other. Listen to this a little more. Ordinarily, we would not say this is gypsy music. This is clearly Gyimesi Chango music, but I'll give you a twist. A violinist here is a guy called Zerkula, wonderful late violinist, Zerkula János, and Zerkula is gypsy origin, as many musicians in Transylvania and in Hungary, of course, are. Many of the string instrumentalists. Great violinist, blind violinist. He was blinded later in his life, I think. So he was not born blind, and his wife is that wicked Gordon player, Regina Neni. And so, you know, is this gypsy music? Well, it's played by a gypsy. It happens to be music of Chango music, but maybe it is gypsy music. In fact, can it not be said that because a gypsy is playing music for centuries, you know, in a dynasty, sometimes in some of these villages, some of these places, some of these regions, be it Szászcsavás, be it Magyar Palatka, you know, Szék, etc. And here we have in Gyimesi. Well, perhaps this is gypsy music. It's music played by gypsies. Play I'm not sure the answer here is this is gypsy music. I'm just posing the question. Of course, this is music played by gypsies, so one might potentially say and argue that of course it's a part of the gypsy folklore as well, part of the gypsy people. Without their music, there would be no dancing, would be none of the tunes and the music that we're now able to play here as part of the Táncház movement, as part of the revival. Let me kind of take that question to the other side of the spectrum, as we go from one end of the geography to the other, as we go from the very east of Transylvania to the very west of Hungary to the region of Rábokköz. Here we have a wonderful gypsy dynasty family, the Greznár family, and we have Greznár Zoltán, who he plays music from he's from Szony in Rábokköz, and so this is of course northeast Hungary, very close to the Austrian border. Well, he's a restaurant musician, but he also knows, and through him we come to know the music of Rábokköz. So he's a not your typical restaurant musician, because he's a restaurant musician that also knows the music of the area where he lives. And here's an example of him and his band playing, and you'll see it's not 100% perfect in terms of the restaurant style, and it's almost not 100% perfect in terms of the folk style. Listen closely. I'll kind of, maybe you could pick up what I mean by that. So first I would say it's not as polished as, let's say, the Sándor Lakatos track we heard at the very beginning of the show, is it? It's a little more crude, I will say, a little more village style sounding, a little less sophisticated than that level. And of course, as folk music goes, as authentic village folk music goes, I venture to guess that this is likely what it didn't sound quite like this, maybe 60, 80 years ago, right? The music. So this is a little more stylized than potentially Greznár's father or grandfather would have played it. By the way, I'm not an expert on Greznár, and I'm not sure that his parents, forefathers played this music. That's probably an episode for another show, or a question for somebody else. But this is a nice kind of fusion as well of the two styles. See what I mean? A little playful there. so that's the music from Raboköz, played by Greznár Zoltán. Of course, one cannot deny that that's gypsy music as well, in the sense that it is played by gypsies. Just like Zerkula played in Gyimes, well, this is music played by gypsies. This has an extra additional aspect of that, which is it's played in a much more contemporary style that probably Liszt Ferenc would be referring to in his old book, and in his mind this is kind of what he's hearing. I think that not quite classical but not quite folk, something in between. Okay, so I wonder who remembers, I'm gonna call it the Szepsi invasion. This is several years ago. Ola Attila, dance teacher, nicknamed Nyúl, came to the February weekend workshop, that cold weekend always every year it happens, that the Bukrito ensemble puts on in Montreal. And the material taught was this I found it very odd material. It's from a place in Slovakia, used to be a part of Hungary, outside of Košice. The Hungarians call that city Kossia. This place, the village I'm referring to, is Szepsi, population 11,000. Actually, that's like a swing state. Speaking of elections, anyway. So Szepsi dances were taught by Ola Attila, and the music is this really interesting, the Slovak gypsy style. And I wanted to play it for you. The dancing was weird because it was just almost like being made up on the spot. It's nothing I quite remember ever seeing before or since, to be honest. There are some great musicians from that area, and the Utolsó Óra, that series that chronicled at the Fono. They brought these people from all over the place into the Fono to record. These were the last Mohicans, as the last generation of great musicians is passing away slowly, unfortunately. Well, these folks came in from Szepsi and recorded a nice CD, and here's a track from there, so you kind of get a nice flavor of the music. And this is as well gypsy music from that area, whatever that means, gypsy music. Hold on one second, that's definitely not it. It's taking a lot of queuing up here. Hear that nice harmony on the singing. So this is undoubtedly that gypsy style music, but to the north of Hungary, from current day Hungary, from Szepsi. Great music. Nice. That's music from Sepsi. Now, what about when gypsy musicians, we mentioned this before, when gypsy musicians play non-gypsy music, kind of like Zerkula in Gimes, or Greznar Zoltán up in Rábokköz? Well, what if they play something completely different than the folk music of the area? Well, we have a nice example of this. Pottagéza, speaking of Felvidék, speaking of Slovakia, Pottagéza, violinist, of course, and Pimos, the bracha player. There's some wonderful recordings that I have of them, and this is they play the boogie, the swing. I'm not sure this makes it gypsy music at all, but it's definitely in their very, very unique style, and there's even some fun singing in this. Let's hear the great gypsy violinist Pottagéza play the boogie, as they call it, or it's the swing, of course, I think. Here we go, listen to this. Oh, it's In the Mood. Still hear the nice folk style, of course, that he has there. Can't make that up. That's unbelievable, isn't it? Haha, that's Pottagéza playing In the Mood. Gypsy musicians playing definitely non-gypsy, non-folk music there. Well, how about another twist? How about when revival musicians, Táncház musicians like myself and maybe some of yourselves listening to this, play and sing gypsy music? Does that make it any less gypsy music? I don't think it does. Do you? Certainly, some of the great musicians in this area are from the Öcsi ensemble. Of course, we talked about recently about the unfortunately recently deceased leader of that band, Öcsi Csaba, the namesake of the Öcsi ensemble. We have a great recording of music from Bonszida, of course, and there's some nice Bonsida is a special place because it's a village where Hungarians and Romanians and Gypsies have coexisted and coexisted in the past as well. And so we have this really nice mixture of cultures there. And Boncidai Háromszor, which is a great CD from the Öcsi ensemble, which highlighted all three nationalities' music there. And I just because Öcsi ensemble, which is a band from Budapest, played this music, doesn't make it any less gypsy. Let's listen to some of this beautiful gypsy music from Bonsida. Certainly a far cry from what Liszt Ferenc perhaps thought was so-called gypsy music. So this is gypsy music from Bonsida, not played by gypsies in this instance here, but played by a Táncház revival band, one of the original ones of this kind, the Öcsi ensemble from many years ago, the Boncidai Háromszor CD, and I know many of you guys love that one, and actually it's like a really nice, kind of like a nostalgia that comes along with listening to that one for some reason. So we kind of asking that question, what is gypsy music? And I'm focused, of course, geographically on Hungary and the area around Hungary, as this show is usually. But there's also, as I mentioned, the gypsy, the gypsies came from India, and they kind of made their way into Europe, and some of them stopped in Hungary and in Romania, Slovakia, as we've heard, but they kept going as well, and all the way into Spain, of course, and actually the flamenco music is known to be the southern, from southern Spain, from the Andalusian region, and the Roma, the gypsies there, are called gitanos actually, so very close to gypsy, gitano. And from that kind of Western Europe area was born this very, very exciting genre of jazz called gypsy jazz. And Django Reinhardt, the great guitarist, and Stefan Grappelli, amazing violinist who I saw play at the Blue Note in New York City before he died several years ago now. But this is the hot club of France, that kind of style of gypsy jazz, as they call it. And one of the great gypsy jazz musicians in that style in the U.S. Is my friend Kruno Spicic, who who recorded a CD, who has recorded many CDs, but on one of the CDs I play with him, together with Alex Fedoriuk on the cimbalom, and I wanted to play a track from there, and it's a beautiful gypsy song called Jelem Jelem. Now we've heard this song referred to with different lyrics, and it's a song actually composed by Žarko Jovanović, a Serbian composer in 1949. This is actually often referred to as the anthem of the Romani people, the anthem of the gypsies, and it was written in memory of the gypsies that died during the Holocaust. And Jovanović himself was a Serbian gypsy musician. This music also, you can actually hear this on the Borat film as well, which is totally changing subject there, but we also hear this called Eder Lezi, but the lyrics are, I had them reading from the translation here. I went on long roads, I met happy Roma. Oh Roma, where do you come from with tents, happy on the road? I once had a great family, the Black Legion murdered them. Come with me, Roma from all the world, for the Roma roads have opened. Now is the time, rise up Roma now, we will rise high if we act. Oh Roma, oh Romani youths. That's a beautiful song, beautiful translation, and in my view, no one does it better than Kruno Špišić, a great purveyor of the gypsy jazz style. So you have this really nice, beautiful, song, the unofficial anthem of the Romani people, combined with this great gypsy jazz style, presented by Kruno Špišić on the guitar and on the voice as well. And if you hear the violin, that'll be me creeping in there. And cimbalom, Alex Fedoriuk from Cleveland.
Želem, želem, lungo nedromeja, malagdile, šukare romeza. Želem, želem, lungo nedromeja, malagdile, šukare romeza. Ay, Romale, ay, Chavale,
this was recorded by Kruno in Philadelphia. I think he was still living in, or is living in Philadelphia already then, and then he brought the his recording devices up to me in Morristown, New Jersey, where I was living at the time, and I took the stuff over to Cleveland to have Alex record it. So it was all over the place, but it turned out to be a lovely recording. Kruno, Spicic, Gypsy Jazz Guitar. That's the name of the CD. I kind of doubled down on the Hungarian flavor on purpose. I'm not quite in the Stefan Grappelli school of playing, and wouldn't even imitate it actually too effectively. Fasten your seatbelts, folks. It's going to start cooking here. Here we go. Go. Jelem, nice song. Well, we've reached the end of this episode. So, what is gypsy music? Well, we certainly know what it, people think it is. There's some corrections on that. There's of course the archaic folklore of the gypsies themselves, which we listen to as well, and we listen to various permutations and iteration of the question as well. Revival bands playing gypsy music, gypsy musicians playing non-Hungarian or non-folk music as well, and we also went to the western part of Europe to listen to that type of style. Although, well, it turns out we went to the Midwest of the U.S. But anyway, the point is, there's a lot of iterations of that question, and it's just as a broader question as what is Hungarian music? Well, anything can potentially count as Hungarian music, whether it's touched by Hungarian. If you're talking about what's Hungarian folk music from Kalotaszeg, well, now we can actually talk a little more details. But it's a very broad question, and I hope you enjoyed the musical selections. I wanted to make sure that if you're listening to this, make sure you subscribe to Tanchaz Talk's YouTube channel for sure. You could also visit the show's website to get downloadable episodes at tanchaz.com, tanchaz.com. And for the podcasts, the interviews series that I do, you can get those also and on all your popular podcast platforms, Google, Spotify, Apple, etc. So as the last entry here to this question, I'd like to harken back to a wonderful show production that toured in the. It was specifically put together for U.S. and Canada tour several years ago. It was called Gypsy Spirit. Who remembers? Do you remember? I remember. It was a great tour. It featured Kalman and his wonderful assortment of musicians, together with Zhuravsky Zoltan's dancing choreography with the Budapest, that was then known, ensemble. And the Gypsy Spirit show was great because it started with music from India, actually, and it worked its way all the way into various styles. There's such great musicians, man. It was crazy. Even my friend Balok Feri, who now lives in Toronto, he was a part of that singing, and it's just a great show, very exciting. And I have a bootleg of it. I have a bootleg of Gypsy Spirit live in Morristown, New Jersey. It's a pretty good recording, and I'm going to play you the one of the finale of the kind of Örkö and Szászcsavás from Transylvania. The kind of a combination of those two villages. Nice little big resounding ending to the show, I think that it was. And so I'd like to leave you with that from a Gypsy Spirit. And thank you for listening, and I hope you tune in next time. Thank you. Jakab Attila was one of the violinists, so yes. Oh, csapás! Hopp, hey. Hashtag transitions! Woo!